being the observer of your thoughts. That's why you can't be your thoughts. You are the observer. That's where you start. You can watch a movie, but you'll never play those parts. You listen to a song and it can really touch your heart. Keep being the observer. That is your part. When you get a whiff, you'll feel a shift, and you can live. Feel the peace in the space you create, and let your awareness drift.
Welcome to week 7, and to part 3 of our course, Conscious Creation. For the past 6 weeks, we've been laying groundwork, learning to observe consciousness, understand patterns, work with energy, see through ego, practice surrender, and experience your expanded nature. Now we're going to explore something that's been wildly misunderstood, overhyped, and corrupted by pop spirituality. The relationship between consciousness and reality. How what you think, believe, and pay attention to shapes your experience. And I need to be very clear from the start. We're not talking about The Secret. We're not talking about magical thinking. We're not suggesting that if you just visualize hard enough, $1 million will appear in your bank account. That kind of teaching is just false. It's harmful. It creates victim blaming. If you're struggling, you must not be manifesting correctly. Bypassing real structural issues and sets people up for failure and self-judgment. What we're exploring is much more grounded, much more nuanced, and actually backed by research. How your consciousness, your attention, beliefs, and inner state shapes your perception, behavior, and thus your experience of reality. This isn't metaphysical speculation. This is documented through decades of research on the placebo effect, where belief and expectation can create measurable psychological changes. Cognitive psychology showing how attention shapes perception, and neuroscience demonstrating how beliefs influence neural processing. So let's be discerning. Let's separate the wheat from the chaff. Let's understand what you can actually influence with your consciousness and what you can't. Attention as creative force. Part A. What you pay attention to expands. And here's a principle that's been validated by cognitive science and that you can verify in your own experience. What you consistently pay attention to shapes your perceived reality. Not because you're magically creating things out of thin air, but because attention is the filter through which reality becomes your experience. Your brain is receiving approximately 11 million bits of sensory information per second, but your conscious mind can only process about 40 to 50 bits per second. So your brain has to filter massively. And what determines what gets through the filter? Your attention, your beliefs, your expectations. This is what cognitive psychologists call the Reticular Activating System, RAS. It's a network of neurons in your brainstem that acts as a filter, deciding what sensory information reaches your conscious awareness. And what programs the RAS? What you deem important, what you focus on, what you believe is relevant. Part B, the classic example. You've probably experienced this. You're thinking about buying a particular car, say a red Honda Civic. Suddenly you start seeing red Honda Civics everywhere. Did more red Honda Civics suddenly appear on the roads? No. Your RAS just started prioritizing that information because it became relevant to you. Personally, this happened when someone asked me, walk casually through the furniture store, because I used to sell furniture. Walk casually through a furniture store. And they said, now this time I want you to walk through the store and look for dust. Now, the first time I walked through the store, I didn't see a speck of dust. The second time, I saw dust everywhere. Or let's imagine that you learn a new word and suddenly you hear it constantly. Or you start thinking about pregnancy and every other person you see seems to be pregnant. This attention-shaping perception, same world, different filter, different experienced reality. Now, this might seem trivial, but I have another example. I remember when I found out that I was going to have twins. Not me personally, but but when we realized that we were going to have twins, we started seeing twins everywhere. Everywhere. Twin carriages, it's just your focus. So, and this might seem trivial. Of course, we notice what we're looking for, but the implications are profound. If you're consistently focused on threat, problems, what's wrong? Your RAS filters for more threat, more problems, more things that are wrong, and that becomes your lived reality. If you're consistently focused on possibility, resources, what's working, your RAS filters for more possibility, more resources, more things that work, and that becomes your lived reality. Part C, beyond passive perception. But it goes deeper than just noticing. Your attention doesn't just filter reality, it shapes your behavior, which then shapes your outcomes. If you believe opportunities are scarce, you'll not look for them as actively, not recognize them when they appear, not act on them when you do see them. You'll interpret neutral events as threats rather than opportunities. And thus, opportunities will be scarce in your experience, not because the universe is withholding them, but because your belief created a self-fulfilling prophecy through your own filtering and behavior. Conversely, if you believe opportunities are abundant, you'll actively look for them, recognize more of what appears to be opportunities, and act when you see them. You'll also interpret ambiguous situations optimistically, and thus opportunities will be abundant in your experience. Same world, different consciousness, different reality. This is not you create reality out of nothing. This is your consciousness shapes which aspects of reality you experience and how you respond to them. That distinction is everything. The placebo effect, when belief becomes biology. The science of belief. Now, let's talk about the placebo effect because it's one of the most well-documented demonstrations of consciousness shaping physical reality. The placebo effect involves actual physiological responses occurring based on beliefs and expectations, despite no active medical ingredients being present. This isn't imagination. This is measurable biological change. Studies have shown that placebos can reduce pain by activating the brain's endogenous opioid system, lower blood pressure, improve depression scores, affect Parkinson's disease symptoms, so increasing dopamine release, influence immune function, and change heart rate and breathing. Recent research shows that individuals can potentially self-induce placebo effects through conscious mechanisms like mental imagery and perceived control. You don't necessarily need deception or an external pill. Think about that. Your belief that something will help you can trigger your body to help itself. Consciousness influencing physiology directly. And the mechanism? Here's what researchers understand about how this works. When you expect relief, healing, or improvement, that expectation activates specific neural pathways. Those pathways then trigger biological responses. Release of neurotransmitters, activation of immune responses, changes in pain perception. Research has even found that placebo effects can work at a non-conscious level. The brain can process cues about treatment outcomes before conscious awareness. This isn't magic. It's biology responding to expectation. And here's what's crucial. You're already experiencing placebo or nocebo effects all the time. The question is whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously. Nocebo, the dark side. The flip side of placebo is nocebo, when negative expectations create negative outcomes. You never hear about this, do you? If you believe a medication will have terrible side effects, you're more likely to experience them. If you believe you're fragile and vulnerable, your body will respond accordingly. If you expect the worst, you often get it. This is why catastrophizing is so dangerous. It's not just negative thinking, it's programming your biology for worse outcomes. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because your nervous system responds to your beliefs. The limits. Now, let me be very clear about limits. Placebo effects work best for subjective symptoms and processes influenced by the nervous system. Pain, nausea, anxiety, depression, some immune responses, blood pressure. Placebo effects are not going to cure cancer, heal broken bones, or make you sprout wings. Anyone who tells you that you can cure serious disease by changing your thoughts is either ignorant or predatory, so don't fall for it. But within this proper domain, your subjective experience, your nervous system regulation, your healing processes that are influenced by stress and belief, the placebo effect is real and powerful. The creation myth versus the reality. What you can't create. Let's talk about what you cannot create with your consciousness, because this is where so much harm has been done. You cannot create money out of thin air through visualization alone. You cannot create a parking spot through manifesting. Confirmation bias when it works, ignored when it doesn't. You cannot create other people's behavior or feelings. Cannot create protection from all adversity and suffering. You cannot create success without skill, effort, or opportunity. You cannot create justice in an unjust system through positive thinking alone. You cannot bypass systemic inequality and oppression. You cannot bypass real material constraints. You cannot bypass other people's free will. You cannot bypass the basic laws of physics. And you cannot bypass privilege and structural disadvantage. The idea that you create 100% of your reality is not just false, it's cruel. It blames people for their oppression. It blames people for illness, poverty, trauma. It turns structural problems into individual failings. Don't believe it. Don't teach it. It's garbage. What you can influence. So what you can influence with conscious awareness? Well, you can influence your perception. How you interpret what happens shapes your experience dramatically. Two people can experience the same event completely differently based on their interpretive framework. You can affect your attention. Where you focus creates more of what you focus on in your experience, not objectively, but experientially. What you focus on, well, where you put your focus gets the hocus pocus. Your state, your inner state, open versus closed, coherent versus chaotic, resourceful versus depleted, dramatically affects how you respond to circumstances. Your own behavior, your beliefs and expectations influence your actions, which then influence outcomes. Your resilience, your meaning-making and interpretive frame affect how you metabolize difficulty. Your choices. Expanded awareness creates more conscious choice rather than automatic reaction. Your relationships. Not by controlling others, but by how you show up influences how others respond to you. If you show up angry, people will respond how they normally respond to anger. So, at the same time, if you show up open and friendly, they will respond to how they normally respond to open and friendly people. The real power, here's the real power of consciousness. Not creating reality out of nothing, but responding to reality with more awareness, more choice, more resourcefulness. When you're conscious, you can see opportunities you would have missed. You can respond to challenges with more creativity, maintain your center in chaos, make your choices aligned with your values, influence your physiology through belief and state, shape your experience when you can't change circumstances. That's powerful. That's real. And that's enough. You don't need magical thinking. You need conscious awareness applied to actual life. Frequently asked questions. Frequently asked question number 1. So manifestation doesn't work? Was all that teaching just wrong? It depends on what you mean by manifestation. If you mean focus on what you want, take aligned action, maintain resourceful state, look for opportunities, then yes, that works. That's just effective goal setting combined with state management. If you mean visualize and the universe will deliver without you doing anything, then no, that doesn't work. That's magical thinking. That's playing the lottery, and maybe you might win. The problem with most manifestation teaching is it conflates these two. It promises the second while what actually works is the first. Frequently asked question number 2. What about all the testimonials of people who manifested amazing things? Confirmation bias, selection bias, survivorship bias. For every person who says, I visualized my dream job and got it, there are thousands who visualized and didn't get it. They just don't write books about it. Also, the people who manifested success usually also took massive action, had certain privileges or opportunities, or got lucky. But they attribute it all to manifestation. I'm not saying consciousness had no role. I'm saying it's not the only factor and probably not even the primary factor. Frequently asked question number 3. Does this mean I'm powerless, that consciousness doesn't matter? No, consciousness matters enormously, just not in the way pop spirituality claims. Your consciousness determines how you experience whatever happens. It also determines how you respond to circumstances, whether you act from reactivity or awareness, your state of being throughout your life, your access to inner resources, your capacity for resilience and growth. That's huge. That's life-changing. But it's not the same as controlling external reality. Frequently asked question number 4. What about quantum physics proving we create reality? No, that's a misunderstanding of quantum mechanics. The observer effect in quantum mechanics means that measurement affects quantum systems at the subatomic level. It does not mean your consciousness controls reality. While some researchers speculatively propose quantum mechanics might play a role in consciousness, there is no strong empirical evidence for this, and even if consciousness involves quantum processes, that doesn't mean you can manifest a Mercedes by thinking about it. Stop using quantum physics to justify magical thinking. Actual physicists don't make these claims. Frequently asked question number 5. This sounds like you're saying to just accept whatever happens and not try to change anything. No. Accepting reality doesn't mean not working to change it. You can fully accept current reality. This is what is. And work toward a different future. And use your consciousness skillfully. And take effective action. Conscious creation isn't passive. It's accepting reality as your starting point, bringing full awareness to it, and responding with all your capacity. That's actually more powerful than magical thinking, which keeps you waiting for the universe to deliver. Here's what I want you to understand as we close. Your consciousness is incredibly powerful, just not in the way you've been told. You're not a God creating reality from nothing. You're a conscious being participating in reality, and your consciousness shapes your experience and responses. That's more than enough. That's actually everything. Now, this week's assignments. Daily practice. In the morning, try 15 minutes of attention training. Follow the guided audio. And throughout the day, notice what you're focusing on and how it shapes experience. In the evening, do reflection on attention patterns and their effects. Now, attention audit. Track what you focus on for 7 days. Notice how attention shapes perception and experience. In your belief inventory, identify your core beliefs about reality, possibility, and yourself. Test them. Conscious experiment. Choose one area to apply conscious awareness. Track what shifts. Reality testing. Distinguish between what you can actually influence and what you're trying to magically control. Next week, we'll go deeper into conscious manifestation, how to actually work with reality rather than trying to force it. But everything depends on understanding this foundation. You're not creating from nothing. You're working with what is, bringing full consciousness to it. That's the real power. That's what actually changes your life. See you next week. Ciao.
Being the observer of your thoughts, that's why you can't be your thoughts. You are the observer, that's where you start. You can watch a movie, but you'll never play those parts. You listen to a song and it can really touch your heart. Keep being the observer, that is your part. When you get a whiff, you'll feel a shift, and you can live. Feel the peace in the space you create, and let your awareness drift. Like waves upon the shore, they come and go. These thoughts arise and then they flow. Step back and watch the mind's sweet show. In stillness lies the deepest truth. Beyond the mind there's living proof that peace resides in letting loose. Just breathe and be, that's all it takes. Watch as each thought gently breaks. In silent wisdom awareness waits. You can watch a movie, but you never play those parts. You listen to a song and it can really touch your heart. Keep being the observer, that is your